Why your dog never trusts by accident. Trust in a dog is not a feeling. It is not a decision. It is a biological state. It is cortisol held low and oxytocin kept available. It is a nervous system that has learned through hundreds of small, repeated experiences that this particular human is safe, that what happens next will be predictable, that the world, in this person's presence, makes sense. It takes a long time to build. It can be damaged quickly, and most owners are building or eroding it every day without realizing they're doing either. Max trusted James completely. Not because James was perfect, because James was consistent. There are 7 things James did every single day. Not because he read about them, not because a trainer told him to, but because over years of paying attention, he had learned what made Max settle and what made him tense, what opened him and what closed him. 7 habits, small enough to miss, significant enough that, compounded over years, they became the architecture of something that looked, from the outside, exactly like unconditional love. The first habit was predictability. Same walk time, same feeding time, same morning, every day. Every day. Dogs don't experience time the way humans do, but they track patterns with extraordinary precision. Researchers studying circadian behavior in domestic dogs found that dogs can anticipate regular daily events, meals, walks, the owner's return, with accuracy that suggests an internal clock calibrated specifically to their owner's schedule. When that schedule holds, cortisol stays low. When it breaks unpredictably, it rises. James kept the schedule even when he didn't feel like it. Even on tired days, even on the days when the walk felt like a chore rather than a choice, because he understood, eventually, that the walk wasn't just exercised for Max. It was evidence that the world was organized, that James was reliable, that today would be, in the most important ways, like yesterday. The schedule was not a convenience. It was a promise, one that James kept quietly, every day, whether or not Max could articulate what it meant to him. The second habit was calm energy at the door. Most dogs lose their minds when their owner comes home. The jumping, the spinning, the frantic reunion. Most owners match that energy, laughing, crouching, talking in high voices, feeding the excitement. James used to do the same. Then he noticed something. On the evenings when he came home tired and quiet, mubbing slowly, speaking softly, Max would greet him and then settle almost immediately. On the evenings when James came home energized and loud, Max would stay activated for 20, sometimes 30 minutes. James was setting the tone. Dogs are exquisitely sensitive to the emotional state of their attachment figure. A 2017 study measuring cortisol in dogs found a significant correlation between owner stress levels and dog stress levels, not just in the moment, but across days and weeks. Your emotional weather becomes your dog's emotional weather. James started coming through the door quietly. He would greet Max warmly, but calmly, a hand on the head, a few soft words, and then go about his routine. If James said sit, he waited for the sit. If he called Max, he made sure Max came. Not obsessively, not harshly, but consistently, because he understood that a dog who learns that commands are sometimes optional, sometimes not, lives in a state of low-grit uncertainty. They are always reading the situation, trying to determine whether this is a real request or a negotiable one. Certainty is a form of kindness. When Max knew that James meant what he said calmly, without anger, without drama, he didn't have to spend energy figuring it out. He could simply respond, and trust that the response was correct, and rest in that knowledge. The fourth habit was never punishing what he didn't understand. There were days when Max did things James didn't expect, chewed something he shouldn't have, reacted to another dog on the street, came back from the yard with mud on his chest and satisfaction on his face. James's first instinct in those early years was frustration, a sharp word, a raised voice, stop it. Not because he was a patient person by nature, he wasn't particularly, but because he had read enough to understand that a dog being punished for something, it doesn't connect to its behavior, does unlearn what you want it to learn. It learns that you are unpredictable, that your mood is a hazard, that calm can become anger without warning. That is the opposite of trust. James started responding to mistakes the way he would want someone to respond to his own. With correction, not punishment. With information, not anger. With a redirect toward what he did want, rather than a reaction to what he didn't. The fifth habit was physical contact on Max's terms. James had read about the importance of touch for dogs, the oxytocin, the cortisol reduction, the bonding research. He had applied it enthusiastically in the early months, reaching for Max constantly. Then he noticed something. Sometimes Max leaned in. Sometimes, subtly, he moved away. James had been so focused on the science of touch that he had missed the dog's own signals about when touch was welcome and when it was oon. He started waiting to be asked. Not always, not rigidly, but when Max came and pressed against his leg, James would rest a hand on him. When Max flopped beside him on the couch, James would scratch behind his ears, and when Max moved away, he let him move away. Trust is not just about what you give. It is about whether the other living thing has a say in what they receive. A dog who is touched when they do want to be touched learns something very specific, that their signals do matter, that their body is not fully their own, that the person they live with does not watch them closely enough to notice. James didn't want Max to learn any of those things. The sixth habit was protecting Max from things that frightened him. Every dog has a list. Loud strangers. Certain dogs, particular sounds, particular places. James learned Max's list over years. The way you learn a person's sensitivities, not from a document, but from paying attention. And when something on that list appeared, James didn't push Max through it. He didn't force the greeting, demand the approach, pull him toward the thing that had made him stiffen. He moved between Max and the thing. It was a small gesture. A shift of position, a hand that came down to Max's shoulder. But what it communicated, what Max's nervous system registered every time was, I see what frightens you. I am here. I will not make you face it alone. That is the precise biological signal of a secure attachment figure, and Max's nervous system received it exactly that way, as confirmation that James was not someone who would push him past his limits, who would decide that what Max found frightening was an inconvenience rather than a real experience, that James was, in the most fundamental sense, on his side. The seventh habit was the one James had started without knowing it, years before he understood what it meant. He talked to Max. Not commands, not training, just conversation, the running commentary of a person going through their day with another creature nearby. What he was making for dinner. What had happened at work, the particular quality of the evening light coming through the kitchen window. Max would lie with his chin on his paws and watch, and James would talk, and something would settle in both of them. We now know what was happening. Neurologically, a familiar calm human voice triggers parasympathetic activation in dogs, the rest digest state, the physiological opposite of the stress response. James's voice, over years of daily conversation, had become a biological signal of safety for Max. Not because of the words, because of the consistency. Because it was always calm, always warm, always there. Because it arrived every day. In the kitchen, in the living room, in the quiet hours of the evening. And it always meant the same thing. I am here. Everything is fine. 7 habits. None of them dramatic. None of them requiring special training, special equipment, or anything that wasn't already available in an ordinary life with a dog. What they required was attention and the understanding that every interaction, every walk, every greeting, every moment of choosing patience over frustration was a deposit into something that accumulated slowly and mattered enormously. The willingness to notice what your dog needed and to show up for it, day after day, without fanfare, without reward, without anyone watching. That is what trust is built from, in dogs and in most things. Not the grand gesture, the daily practice, the 10,000 small moments of choosing to be reliable, consistent, present. Max trusted James with everything he had, with his sleep, with his fear, with the particular weight of a dog who has decided, completely and without reservation, that one person in the world is safe, because James, every single day, gave him a reason to. If this video stayed with you, Share it with someone whose dog needs this. And if you want to understand what your dog is really trying to tell you, every day, in every quiet moment, subscribe to Silent Paw. Because they speak more than words. We just have to learn how to listen.